Hi, beautiful mama, and welcome to the Nourished Podcast. My name's Annabelle, but before we begin, I want to acknowledge you, the woman sitting here today. I want to acknowledge your strength. I want to acknowledge how much your body has been through to get you to this point. You have created life. You have held life within you for 9 months. And you continue to hold life today. It is a beautiful thing. So I want you to just stop for a moment and truly acknowledge that. You are a superhuman. Your body is stronger and has been through so much more than you've ever thought possible. So give yourself a pat on the back, a round of applause, because you deserve it. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about listening to your body, about tuning into it, because it's so important. As mothers, it's so easy for us to lose ourselves, to lose our connection with our body, to stop listening to the signals that our body is sending to us when we need to rest, when we need to eat properly, or even when we need to move. Now look, it's not about learning, it's not about perfection, and it's certainly not about hyper-focus on health, okay? Because that in itself is not connecting to your body. When we're so focused on optimization and smashing out a gym session, that's not always what our body needs. When our mind takes control and when our mind takes over, often that's when the signal gets cut off. So this episode is about tuning into your actual body and asking it, what do I need? What do I need right now? And what nourishment can I give my body in this moment? Because when we get to a point where we can reconnect with our body, then we're reconnecting with ourselves. Now this disconnection to self and disconnection to body, it didn't just happen overnight. It happened slowly. And perhaps we look back to before we had children, perhaps we weren't even connected to our body then. Okay, I know for me personally, I've gone through a series of patterns throughout my life where I have constantly overridden my body's signals, from working in hospitality and doing very long shifts and going straight to a big day at uni. From working in events where, we're expected to work long hours during the week and then work even longer hours on the weekend. And then straight into motherhood as well. It's so easy to get lost in these patterns because in a way we're rewarded from them. We're rewarded from the external world, from pushing through and excelling and moving forwards towards a seemingly endless goal. Because I've said this many times, but a woman's work's never done. A mother's work is never done. And so we can so easily burn ourselves out, burn our energy, use up our precious reserves from within by simply doing another load of washing, by simply doing another load of dishes. And then we find ourselves in this state of overwhelm, of depletion, and we look at our lives and what we've created, and it becomes overwhelming because we don't see a way out, because we think the way out is the same way that we went in. But, the same thinking doesn't create the solution. Okay, so we need to change our thinking with that one. We've arrived in this world, in this life, and it's brought about by disconnection to our body. Yes, and so this pattern continues. And so the pattern we see is, okay, well, if I just push harder, if I just do more, if I make the house perfect, if I make all the snacks perfect, if I make every social event, then I will feel better. But it's so much simpler than that, okay? Because when we're disconnected from our body and we're feeling overwhelmed and everything is too much, the solution is not to do more, The solution is to do less. And there's an art to that as well. There really is an art to being able to stop and embrace that simplicity of life and to stop for a moment, okay? But it's not enough to just stop for a moment. We need to be able to stop without the guilt. Because guilt is an interesting factor when it comes to our body and being disconnected from it. Because every time we move towards reconnecting with ourselves, with our body, perhaps resting, then guilt kicks in. But guilt is interesting because it's an expensive emotion. It's an expensive state, and it uses up our precious reserves. So if we say, take the moment, like say we have half an hour and we sit down to rest, yet we spend that whole time in guilt, we're not actually nourishing ourselves. Okay, and now the question is asked is, well, how do we move beyond that? The solution to that is accepting that sometimes we have to feel uncomfortable to feel comfortable. Now, let me explain that. Okay, we fall into these patterns, and say guilt is an emotion that has plagued you for your life. I say plagued because, guilt as a consistent emotion is not one that we want to have. But say guilt has been around you for a lot of your life, maybe from childhood. So it feels familiar, right? Just because something feels familiar doesn't mean that it's good, okay? So when guilt comes on, subconsciously we go, oh, I know this feeling, I understand it, so therefore I'll allow it. It actually feels more uncomfortable to accept that we're feeling guilty and allowing that to pass through us. Because what happens then is we move into the realm of the unknown. And the realm of the unknown, at first, can be a lot more scary than the known. Okay, we all know that. But these are all patterns and these are all lessons that we've learned, okay, throughout our life. Perhaps we've been rewarded from pushing through exhaustion, pushing through stress, pushing through emotional overwhelm, rather than actually stopping and acknowledging how we're feeling internally, because life's busy. Sometimes it's so easy to just go, I'm going to push all of that down. I'm going to push all of that under me because it's easier, because I have too much to do. Okay, but I've said that guilt's expensive, but overwhelm's just as expensive too. Depletion is just as expensive. Exhaustion is just as expensive. And it's expensive to us, to our energy, to our life force, to our internal power. Okay? It's like a currency that we hold within us. And when we ignore our body's signals, we're constantly cashing it over our power, cashing over our ability to reconnect with ourselves. Okay, and that's why it's expensive, because the more that we override our body's signals, the more prominent the expenses come. But the point I'm trying to make with all of this is that we've become so good at functioning while being disconnected from ourselves. We've gotten so used to overriding our internal signals that when they arise, we don't always know it. Okay? How many of you have gone through the season of getting sick? Okay, we all do it. It's like our body finally hits a point and we're forced into rest. Okay, because most of the time that's what it is. And I'll explain that as well, okay, because this is not woohoo, this is biological. When we push through our body's reserves and we become depleted, our immune system suffers from that, okay? Because there's not enough nourishment, there's not enough rest. And when we become undernourished, then our immune system doesn't have anything to lean on, okay? And maybe that's from, not resting, Maybe that's from eating on the go. Maybe that's from, just scoffing something that's unnourishing for lunch or breakfast, or not eating at all. Okay, our immune system suffers from that. And then our body fights back by asking us to rest. And that often comes through illness, unfortunately, because for some of us, or for many of us, that's the only time when we'll actually stop and listen to our body, okay? But it's just a chronic state of depletion, isn't it? All right, because when we slow down and when we properly nourish ourselves and when we listen to our body's needs, then we're not going to get sick as much. It's very interesting how that happens because we have a stronger immune system. Our body is more replenished. We have less weak spots within our body and within our system for illness to come through, because we've all had those times too when we're feeling really great and perhaps our children get sick, they get a flu, they get a cold, yet we don't, and we're fine. And we're like, yes, we've got this. But then there's other times when we feel tired and depleted, and then on top of it all, we get ill and we're stuck in bed for a couple of days. And in those couple of days, we don't even properly rest because we're sitting there going, I should be doing so much more than what I am. And then the frustration gets added on top of that. And then we become our own worst enemies, don't we? So as frustrating as that is, there are signals that our body communicates with us. And for some of us, especially those who have gotten so used to overriding our body signals, it takes time to actually stop and reconnect and tune back in and go, okay, well, what is my body trying to say? But the more you do that, the more you become aware of the signals as they come. So rather than just pushing through, you'll notice a signal as it comes up, and then you'll go, oh, okay, I get it. I know what that means, okay? And now the body communicates through different ways, okay? Tension is a great one. Muscle tension, when we feel tense, when we tense up. Sometimes we're constantly tense. I've had those moments where I've stopped and noticed my body for a moment and realized, my goodness, I've been tensioning my shoulders. And I don't know how long I've been doing that for, but it must have been a long time because I don't even know when I started. Fatigue's a great one, okay? When we're tired, we wake up exhausted and we have to have a coffee to get through the day, or we have that crash throughout the day and we reach for a coffee rather than stopping and laying down for 5 minutes. Irritability, snapping, when we go into a situation with the best intentions and, overstimulation of a scenario happens, and then all of a sudden we're snapping, we're irritable, we say comments that we wish we hadn't said. These are all signs of a system that needs more space, okay? And that's not to say that you need a week on your own, as amazing as that would be. Perhaps that's giving yourself 1 minute of silence where you can move beyond your thoughts and just stay with yourself, okay? Because the reality of it all is, as mothers, we don't always have that time and the luxury to have a half an hour nap, It's about those micro incorporations that we can add into our day, those micro check-ins. It's so important because if we don't have those, we're not actually necessarily going to know what our body is trying to communicate with us. Anxiety is another sign of disconnection from body. Numbness, headaches, these are all to do with emotional aspects and what nourishment our body is truly asking for. Perhaps it's just a little bit of time out. Even that inability to rest is a sign that your body is communicating, okay? When we push beyond our limits and we go to rest, it often can take a long time for our system to actually be able to settle into that rest. And I'm not saying just, it's going to take half an hour. Because as I said, we don't always have half an hour. Perhaps it's going to take 10, 5-minute breaks that you give to yourself to actually finally be able to settle into that. And these are the micro inclusions that we can add throughout our day. Okay, even if you have to set that into your phone, even if you have to add a reminder, I get it. It happens. Know that these aren't character flaws. They're signals. You don't have to feel guilty about it because it's not your body collapsing, it's your body communicating. And now this one is probably predominant to all of you. Shallow breathing. Our breathing is so important because it's the number one signal to our body of safety. When we enter into fight and flight, when we enter into the sympathetic nervous system activation, which fight and flight is, instantly our breathing becomes shallow. Okay, it's that signal of danger. But when we don't have danger, when we've just got overstimulation and stress, we also enter into that. So being conscious every single moment, or taking time to check in on your breathing and how deep you are breathing, is an important inclusion into your day. Even if every hour on the hour you check your watch and go, I'm just going to take 1 minute and breathe deeply. Breathe deeply and reset that hour for yourself. You might be thinking, well, Annabelle, I've got too much to do. I can't think all the time of doing that. Or perhaps I do it for a day and then I forget. This is where systems come into it. Systems are so important. If you do need to set that alarm every hour, if you do need to, put a reminder in your phone, then do it. Okay, I get it. I'm forgetful all the time. And so having these systems in place to allow you to is so important. Because the main insight I want to take away from this is that when we repeatedly ignore our body's signals, we're losing connection with ourselves, okay? Because our body is designed to protect us. Our body is our protective suit. And many symptoms that the body shows us are adaptations to chronic stress. The thing with chronic stress is it doesn't get better by constantly overriding ourselves. It gets better when we move out of fight and flight. When we start to notice our nervous system, what our nervous system is telling us, what our body is telling us. Because it's so important, because when we are in a state of chronic stress, which so many mothers are, and I get it, because it's constant planning, it's constant doing. There's so many things that need to be done every single day just to keep life running. But when we're coming from all that planning from a place of depletion, because we haven't taken those moments to ask ourselves what we need and to reconnect with ourselves, then it becomes a lot harder to do all of those things. Because we know the seasons when we feel on top of it and we feel great, and then the other seasons where we don't and everything's falling apart and we're becoming overwhelmed. Think back to those seasons and think, well, when I was on top of things, how aware was I of my body? How rested was I? How much excitement was in my life at that time? And how full was my cup? And then the times where everything was getting on top of you, think, was I listening to my body? Was I coming from a place of depletion? Was I not resting enough? And now resting, when I talk about resting, it's not even necessarily laying down on the couch and resting. It's resting within our nervous system. It's being aware of when fight and flight becomes active within our system and learning to rewire it. Because fight and flight, can be confusing because it's our body's protective mechanism, okay? It's designed to protect us based on past pattern awareness. But when something happens in our current life and our nervous system takes that as a threat, even though it isn't, then our nervous system is going to flare up. And it takes time to rewire that. And I'll go deeper onto that in another episode, because today is just about the body, not just the nervous system. But it's hard to not talk about one without the other because we are so intertwined, aren't we? And the thing with our nervous system is that our children actually sit within the mother's nervous system. Okay, it's like for the first 8 years of their life or something. And so children feel the mother's nervous system before they feel your words. Now, when we are calm, when we are centered, even though our children, they're learning big emotions, they're going through big things, they come back to their center faster. When they watch us be calm while we're doing something, when they watch us be present, when they watch us rest, when our body needs to rest, or nourish ourselves, when our body needs to be nourished, even when our body is asking for stretching. They're simple little things, but our children watch all of it. And that's how they learn to connect with their body as well. That's how they learn to stay connected when their life in the future, potentially goes through a rocky period. They think back to that time, whether it's consciously or unconsciously, and they know the steps to take to stay connected with themselves through all of it. So I've said it a few times in this episode, but whether it's today, whether it's right on this moment, I want you to set an alarm, okay? Or set a reminder in your phone for at least 2 to 3 times per day, and do it as your check-in, okay? It won't take long. It doesn't matter where you are. It doesn't matter what you're doing. That alarm goes off and I want you to stop and check in with yourself and go, what is my body feeling? What do I need? Do I need more movement? Do I need more rest? Am I actually hungry, but I've just been overriding that signal? Okay? Because the more that you can do this, the more it becomes more natural, all right? And it doesn't actually take very long to do that, but it's so important and it's such a good habit to incorporate into your day. Now, the goal is not to fix the body, okay? The goal is to start listening again, listening to your body, listening to the little cues, because our body, it doesn't scream to begin with. Our body whispers, and the more whispers we ignore, they get louder and louder and louder. So know that it's safe for you to slow down enough to start listening to your body again. You're not going to collapse if you do that. You know you're strong enough. Your children know you're strong enough. Now it's time to take that attention inwards, even if it's for a few moments per day. Now, if you enjoyed this episode, then go ahead and share it with another mama you know, because the more mamas who know this, the more fulfilled our society is going to be. I know that you've shown up so much and you continue to do so, and I appreciate that. I see you. I see the work that you're doing to bring yourself back to you. So well done, and I'll see you in the next episode.